Greetings. Welcome to W5U2 Direct Instruction Part 2. In the earlier unit, we understood the principles of direct instruction and a model of direct instruction that is based on Merrill's first principles of instruction. The outcome of this unit is understand the transactional model of direct instruction. This is the model of direct instruction that we are going to discuss in this unit. It's called transactional model. Basically, there are four phases. If you see, phase A, presentation; phase B, practice; phase C, assessment and evaluation. And there is a phase which actually keeps interacting with all the other phases. That's why if you see, the arrows go to all the three phases. That is phase D, which is monitoring and feedback. It's not like it is a phase which comes at the end. It interacts with all the phases. Just by looking at these words, one does get a feeling that this is quite similar to the instructional unit that we discussed in the previous unit. In fact, there are similarities. Many of the models which are for direct instruction are based on Merrill's principles. So certainly there is certain amount of similarity. We will look at that. There is also a difference in the way it is structured. Basically, the models differ in the way they structure the content. So in the first phase, phase A, which we called as presentation, there are 5 activities that the instructor engages in. Those are review, what, why, explanation, probe and respond. These are specific meanings and functions in this model. We will quickly look at these 5 activities. From the cognitive psychology, it is very important to link new information to the existing cognitive structures. This we have discussed many times in the earlier unit on the Merrill's principles, on Gagne's theory. Even in the previous unit, we have discussed the importance of this. So the first 3 methods of presentation phase, that is review, what and why. If you see, the first 3 are review, what and why. These provide a rich structure within which instruction will take place. These 3 must be considered as one kind of unit, in the sense that these 3 methods provide the structure within which instruction will take place. The transactional model lists these 3 instructional activities in one specific order, but there is no compulsion that instructor must follow this order. Instructor can change this order if seen fit, but what is important is that all these 3 activities are completed before the explanation of new information is started. That is, before starting with the new information, the instructor must complete review, what and why, in whichever order the instructor feels is appropriate. Then the instructor can proceed to explanation. So what is review? Activate the prior knowledge that is relevant or prerequisite to the new learning that is to take place. Teacher and students can together review, discuss such material. Teacher could create an activity that requires students to utilize the relevant prerequisite competencies that have been previously learned. So there are several ways that this review activity can happen. Students must be able to form links between the prior competencies and the new competency. So this phase is essentially activating the prior knowledge that the students need to have in place before proceeding to acquire the new knowledge. What? A clear statement of what the students are expected to be able to do at the end of the instruction unit, which is nothing but course outcome or competency in our standard terminology. So it's a good practice to state upfront the assessment instruments that will be used by the instructor in relation to this CO or competency. That's also very helpful. In the related NPTEL course on outcome-based education and accreditation, we discussed the importance of having the course outcome, the assessment and instruction aligned to each others. That is, a consistency across all these three is very important. So it is helpful to state upfront the assessment instruments also. Students will clearly know what they are expected to be able to do and how they will be assessed in that ability. So an outline of the lesson schedule of this instructional unit also would be desirable. You can just quickly give an outline of how the instruction is going to happen for this unit. That could be done in the form of even a concept map, or it could be done in the form of a brain map. Many other instructional units components are available for the instructor to use. The third activity is why. Instructor must satisfactorily answer the student's question, why should I be engaged in this learning process? What is its relevance? Why should I be bothered about this particular competency? So teacher must satisfactorily answer this so that student sees the relevance of this particular competency for her professional career. Teacher can use anecdotes, discussions, case studies, competencies required in related courses and so on to make the students see the importance of the stated CO or competency to his or her professional life. This essentially makes the students get interested in that particular instruction model, what is happening in the instruction. So this is a way to gain the attention of the students. So these three activities must be completed before we proceed with the presentation of the new material. So fourth is explanation. Begin the instruction on the new material. So notice we have completed the first three activities in whichever order the instructor has felt appropriate. Now commences the new material. So begin instruction on the new material. Instruction must facilitate students to acquire and demonstrate the stated CO or competency. So instructor is free to choose the specific instructional approach or the tools or components that she would like to use, and based on the CO or competency, instructor has the freedom to decide on how this is to be proceeded. The next activity is the probe and respond. So during instruction, teacher must probe the students regarding their learning of the new material being presented. Quick and short formative assessments essentially. This data would be helpful in improving the instruction, as we shall see while discussing phase C, assessment and evaluation. In the sense that quickly a small question or a small quiz can be held while the demonstration is going on, and the teacher can see how the students are responding to that, and this can help the teacher figure out how the instruction is going on. And in this activity, it is important to plan the wait times carefully. That is, the teacher poses a question without giving even a second's time for the students to reflect on the question. Teacher immediately says, okay, I will give you the answer, and immediately answers. Then that doesn't serve any purpose. So there must be a reasonable time given for the students to respond to the question. So between probe and a response, there must be a reasonable time between the student's response and teacher's response. So once the students respond, again the teacher can respond further by either reinforcing that idea or clarifying it further and all. Here also allow certain pause time or wait time for the students to absorb what has been going on. Of course, there are limitations about the time that is available in a given classroom. As we already saw, in direct instruction, we generally work under very rigid time constraints. Yes, but within those constraints, ensure that a certain appropriate wait time is included. Then we go to the next phase, which is phase B, which is practice phase. It is widely established that providing learners with a very large number of opportunities to practice the competencies being acquired is a crucial element of quality learning. This again we have emphasized in any number of previous units and in also different models and different contexts. The practice phase of the transactional model has three activities: guided practice, independent practice, periodic review. Guided practice is essentially students practice the application of the newly acquired knowledge and skills under the direct supervision of the teacher. Students could work independently, that is as an individual or in groups, but teacher must monitor the student activity and provide feedback immediately to help the students in their practice. However, this may be often difficult in regular classroom sessions, again because of the constraint of the time. In a fixed time, to ensure that the teacher can monitor the student activity, whether on a one-to-one basis or even if the students are working in groups, to go through all the groups' work and then provide them feedback, it may be nearly impossible. In the model of direct instruction, this particular activity becomes very difficult because of the time constraints basically. So, it is often more feasible in tutorial sessions. This again shows the importance of appropriate amount of time allocated to tutorial sessions. There, the tutor will be able to spend more time with the students or student teams and provide constructive feedback as and when required. So, the guided practice, while it is very important, in implementation we may have to depend upon tutorial sessions. Then we have the independent practice. Students independently practice the application of the newly acquired knowledge and skills. This can occur in the classroom, but more often it happens outside the classroom. It could be a take-home assignment given by the teacher, and the students can work at home and submit the assignment in time. But the most important is that students must complete the work. That is how the teacher can know that the students are able to work independently and have acquired the required knowledge and skills. So, students must complete the work and their work must be evaluated by the teacher. That is equally important. Students must know that their work is not just casual activity, but teacher is going to evaluate that work, and teacher must provide feedback to the students. All these three are important. Otherwise, it becomes a kind of mere formality and it doesn't help in learning by the students. Students must complete the work, their work must be evaluated by the teacher, and teacher must provide feedback to the students. Then we have the periodic review activity. This can be incorporated into teacher probes, guided practice and independent practice. It can be incorporated into any of these three activities. Key feature is that students practice on tasks that require them to use recently acquired knowledge and skills as well as those acquired earlier. That is, you are trying to kind of reinforce the ideas that the students have understood in the earlier units and are understanding in the present unit. That is, you are helping them with the integration of the new knowledge with the prior knowledge. So these are all combined. So students practice on tasks that require them to use recently acquired knowledge and skills as well as those acquired earlier. So a kind of integration is strengthened. Such a revisit to the material learned earlier is known to promote learning significantly. It leads to deep learning. Even when the material is in long-term memory, students need practice retrieving that information and using it appropriately. So it is helpful always to make the students use the prior knowledge also often while they are applying the current knowledge. Then we go to phase C, which is assessment and evaluation. It includes formative assessment as well as summative assessment and evaluations. Formative assessment and evaluation primary purpose is to gather data that can be evaluated to decide if any mid-course corrections to the instruction or additional instructional sessions are required to improve the learning. To figure out if everything is going okay or if the students are having some issues with some aspects of the new knowledge to be acquired and whether there are some obstacles to the students' correct understanding of the new knowledge required. All these things can be figured out based on the formative assessments and the teacher can take suitable corrective action. So they could be adding some more material to be discussed in the classroom or revisiting some of the material and presenting it from a different perspective. It could be the instructor's choice on how this is done. Then data from probing and responding, observations during practice and periodic review as discussed in the previous phases of the presentation and practice can be used for this purpose. Additionally, and also often, data from specific formative assessments like quizzes administered during the courses are also used. You can use any number of these ideas, but the primary idea is to gather data to see if the learning is proceeding appropriately or if there are any corrections to be made or additional sessions are required. Summative assessment and evaluation. Data from summative assessment instruments administered as a part of continuous internal evaluation is used in the computation of the attainment of the COs. So the basic feature of summative assessment is that the outcome of this assessment is part of the computation of the attainment of the COs. It gets reflected in the grades awarded to the students. This is also an essential activity in the outcome based education and this is discussed extensively in other courses of NPTEL such as TEL, NET, OBE, etc. Notice that this may not happen immediately after this particular unit is covered because the schedules of these assessments is based on certain departmental level or institute level considerations. But it does happen, summative assessment and evaluation does happen. So the most important point is that all assessment must be aligned to the COs. Then we come to the final phase, phase D. Though I say final, as I mentioned earlier, it's not that sequentially it comes at the end. Actually, this phase interacts with all other phases. So phase D, monitoring and feedback, includes two instructional activities that should occur as often as required throughout the instruction. That is very important. It's not that it comes only at the end. One is cues and prompts, another is corrective feedback and reinforcement. As often as required, as often as possible, these activities keep occurring throughout the instruction, that means throughout all the phases. Cues and prompts used when previous material is being reviewed, questions are being asked by the instructor or students are engaged in guided practice. Provided to students when they are almost there but are unable to proceed further. This was the idea of scaffolding, if you remember, zone of proximal distance that was discussed in the earlier unit. If repeated cues and prompts fail to get the students complete the task, it is likely that further instruction is required. This is very important. If the repeated cues provided by the instructor and prompts given by the instructor fail to get the students complete the task, it is much more likely that there are some issues with the students learning and further instruction is required. The other activity is corrective feedback and reinforcement. Instructor must provide corrective feedback and reinforcement after every assessment of student learning, formative as well as summative, during the instruction. Of course, we cannot do so in the case of semester end examination, though that is a summative assessment, but in all other cases certainly we can provide. The delay between the assessment and the feedback must be as small as possible to make it really effective. Again, this is extremely important. As soon as the assessment is over, the students really will be waiting for the feedback from the instructor. So, the faster you give the feedback, the better will be the learning by the students. This is found to be generally correlated most strongly to student achievement compared to other actions of the instructor. Feedback must be provided to help students to know not only the right answers but also the reasons why a particular answer is right or wrong. It is essential that the students give the right answer, true, but the reasoning, the process by which they arrived at the right answer must also be the correct and valid one. So, the instructor must assess both the answer given actually and the process by which the students arrived at the answers, and the students must know that. So, your feedback must include both the process by which the students arrived at the answer and the answer itself. Because if the answer is wrong, certainly the students have to be made to understand why the answer is wrong and where is the error in the process of arriving at the answer. Feedback must be provided in the spirit of helping the students. The purpose of feedback is not to ridicule the students or not to castigate them or not to insult them. It is a basic responsibility of the teacher to help the students. So, in the spirit of helping the students, feedback must be provided. It must be constructive feedback. Reinforcement, a positive appreciation of academic achievement without ridiculing low achievers. That is very important. Never use comparisons. Without ridiculing low achievers, a positive appreciation of academic achievement is also generally found to be contributing to quality learning. This phase is different from the previous phase, assessment and evaluation, in that monitoring and feedback occurs throughout the instruction as and when required, whereas assessment and evaluation is more structured. It occurs one specific point in the instruction plan, and that is a specific kind of a phase with highly structured activities happening. But this particular phase, monitoring and feedback phase, is characterized by the fact that the activities occur throughout the instruction as and when required. So, it is a relatively unstructured one. So, transactional model, Merrill and Gagne, let us just quickly tie them up all together. The transactional model of direct instruction presented here has 12 instructional activities spread over 4 phases. We discussed Merrill's 5 first principles of instruction and Gagne's 9 events of instruction in earlier units. Though the terminology and organization of instructional activities in this transactional model of direct instruction is somewhat different from those of Merrill and Gagne, it is easy to see that there is good correspondence among all of them, in the sense that the basic good principles from Merrill and Gagne are present in the transactional model also. Okay. So, in fact, if you go back into the various activities and phases presented, we can easily see the correspondence to Merrill as well as Gagne. Okay. So, there is a meta pointer given in case you are interested more in different instructional design theories and models. This is a fairly exhaustive book edited by Regular, Allison A. Carr, Chelman and others, and it is a fairly exhaustive treatise. Routledge 2009. Though it looks slightly older, the collection of essays is quite exhaustive. So, with that we come to the end of the direct instruction model. In the next unit, we will understand instruction for design thinking. Again, another extremely key important feature that the students must acquire. So, in the next unit, we will meet again with the instruction for design thinking. Thank you and bye.